Good afternoon. Well, I want to thank your president for those kind words and kind thoughts about me and my business and what I've been able to accomplish and what I continue to aspire to do. It's a pleasure to follow the treasurer of the United States of America and hear her thoughts about real estate and how we can improve home ownership. As you heard, I am the former chairperson of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Board. What that is a think tank of the 50 African American members of the United States House of Representatives. And we conduct an annual legislative conference in Washington, D.C. every September. And we focus on moving the black agenda forward. I happen to be the first non-member of Congress to be elected to that position. And so you can imagine that I am a Democrat. But before I was a Democrat, before I was a real estate developer, before I was a business person, I was a black person. And throughout my lifetime, black people in America have struggled. We have fought and made some progress, but we continue to struggle. So, as a black man in America, and the child and grandson and great-grandson and so on of black Americans, I practice a theory that Henry Kissinger outlined a long time ago. So Henry Kissinger, one of our illustrious secretaries of state, once said that America has no permanent friends, America has no permanent enemies, America just has permanent interest. So, as you may have heard, my office is in New York City. Happens to be on 5th Avenue and 58th Street. That is 1 block away from the offices of the current President of the United States. So we happen to be in the same business. We happen to have a similar name. And for some reason or another, people want to draw comparisons over the years between him and I. We are different people. So I got to know him over the years, and so when my friend and his daughter, Ivanka Trump, asked me to meet with him as president-elect, and I may mention also that I happen to be a personal friend of the 44th President of the United States, and served on his finance committee, and of course grew frustrated over the years at some of the things that were said about my friend and my leader. I practice the theory of Henry Kissinger: no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interest. And my interest is advancing the plight of black people in America. So I indicated to our then President-elect team that if he was prepared to discuss an agenda of economic empowerment for African Americans, I was certainly willing to accept the honor to be president. So I did meet with him, and I shared with him I thought that the #1 challenge facing black America is that we don't have any money. And as a man who has a considerable amount of money, he can appreciate the power that money has. And I'm sure one thing he can't appreciate is the powerlessness of not having it. And so I asked him to focus on reaching black America through entrepreneurship by providing access to capital so that we could grow our businesses. Brought in his chief of staff and Peebles, and we discussed that. So now that the treasurer is here, we haven't made any progress here, so now that the treasurer is here, I'm asking her to go and tell the Secretary of the Treasury that we would love to work with this administration about an agenda of economic empowerment. So, on my way, now I got here because your president asked me to be here, and he rolled out a very old friend of mine, Joanne Williams. Got her on the phone to ask me to come and do this, and I'll talk about my history with the organization in a few minutes. And so, I was in Washington, D.C. last night, so I traveled a lot. So yesterday I was in New York City. After being in Sag Harbor that morning, that afternoon, New York City, and then flew to D.C. so I could speak at a round table about Black men as fathers. And with my son, we talked about fatherhood and what that meant. And then this morning, we business in my D.C. office, and I'm here today. But I talked to a good friend of mine who also knows Joanne, and I said, you know, I'm getting ready to give the keynote address to the opening day of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And I'm like, what did I do to deserve that? And he said, you know what, you really didn't. Joanne's doing you a favor because you don't really deserve it. So, it made me think about a story about a developer who died. So I'm going to share it with you. Now, obviously, many people, hopefully not in this room, think developers dying is probably a good thing. But I hope to be around a little longer. So anyway, this developer dies, and he reports to the pearly gates, and he's greeted by St. Peter. So St. Peter looks down and checks the dossier, and he sees that the developer's name is not on the list. So he tells the developer, hey, your name's not on the list, you can't come in. So the developer said, I figured as much. So he went to hell. So he reports to the gates of hell. Satan welcomes him with open arms. So after about 3 months or so in hell, the developer starts getting uncomfortable with his surroundings. And he decides to start making some improvements. So the first thing he does is install some air conditioning. And some flushing toilets, and some escalators. So pretty soon the developer is a pretty popular guy down in hell. So one day Satan's kicked back by the fireside and the phone rings. And it's God. God says, how's it going down there in hell? Satan says, actually not too bad. Things are going pretty well down here. I mean, we got air conditioning, flushing toilets, escalators. Who knows what this developer is going to come up with next? God says, what? You got a developer? That's a mistake. You shouldn't have had a developer. You need to send him up here immediately. Satan said, no way. I like having a developer on staff. Back people. And God said, if you don't send him up right this minute, I'll sue you. And Satan starts laughing euphorically and says, oh yeah? Well, where are you going to get the lawyers? I first became aware of the phrase realtist when I was 12 years old. I heard it from my mother, Ruthie Von Willoughby. In fact, the first time I heard the term real estate, I was 8 years old. The real estate industry is filled with opportunity, especially for Black Americans. I witnessed this firsthand as a child, and I lived it as an adult. To bring the point home, I'll tell you a little bit about my childhood. So my parents were from working class families. My paternal grandfather was a public school janitor. My maternal grandfather was a hotel doorman at the Boardman Park Hotel in Washington, D.C. He held that position for 41 years. My father was a Korean War veteran, and after his military service, he had a lifetime career as an auto mechanic, which was his entrepreneurial endeavor, and his day job was that of a file clerk for the federal government. My mother was 16 when she and my father married and gave birth to me when she was 19. Sadly, my parents divorced when I was 5 years old. A couple of years later, though, my mother remarried, and she and her new husband purchased a home in a new subdivision in Seat Pleasant, Maryland. You all are probably wondering, or some of you anyway, wondering where that is. It's a suburb of Washington, D.C. in Prince George's County, Maryland. This was the place where a growing number of middle-class blacks began to move in their search for better lives for themselves and their families. So that move changed my mother's life and mine as well. But not for the obvious reasons of moving to a new community, but because of a closing statement. The closing on her new house, my mother reviewed the closing statement, and she was struck by the line item for the broker commission. She would often say she was struck as much by the amount or the small amount of time that the sales agent spent with her and my stepfather to earn that commission. She thought of herself, and she thought to herself that wasn't very hard, and she was a people person, and she could do that job as well, or maybe even better. So she immediately enrolled in a class to learn the basics of real estate in preparation for getting her sales license. Within a few months, she and her husband separated, and she and I moved to Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan was where one of my mother's 4 sisters lived. There, my mother entered the real estate business as a sales agent for a boutique brokerage company called Lamar Realty. The year was 1968. I was 8 years old. Within 2 years, my mother got a broker's license and started her own firm. It was called Firestone Realty, and the year was 1970, and I was 10 years old. Given my mother's youth when I was born, and as I aged, there was not a large generation gap between us. And since it was essentially just the 2 of us in our household, from the time I was 8 years old, we were very close. My mother was very, very deliberate in exposing me to the many career opportunities that were available to me, as well as exposing me to the real estate business. So over the next 10 years, I had a ringside seat to the obstacles that my mother confronted as a real estate broker and entrepreneur who happened to be a black woman. That exposure and the observations that I had and the resulting opportunities and consequences that she received shaped my worldview. I witnessed extreme injustice and racism at its core, and at the very same time saw great opportunity. My mother, in her continued effort to expose me, arranged for me to get a 6-month term as a United States House of Representatives page. It was an amazing opportunity to attend high school in the Library of Congress and to work in the United States House of Representatives and meet the then 13 black members of the United States Congress. So I was 16 years old, and what struck me, I was essentially the same age my mother was when she got married. Through hard work and a developing skill to build relationships, I was able to stay on the Hill for 2 years and graduated from high school from the United States Capitol Page School and received my high school certificate of achievement from the then President of the United States in the Rose Garden at the White House, and that was Jimmy Carter. That was the then first president I ever met. My plan, as I outlined on my senior yearbook page, was to go off to Rutgers University to study pre-med, to go to medical school and become a doctor. I would then invest some of the money I made from practicing medicine into real estate and then become rich. Noble goal. After my freshman year at Rutgers, though, I decided I did not want to go into medicine. So I quit, and I went back home to Washington, D.C., and became a real estate agent. Now, this was not the career path that my parents had dreamed of for me. This was not the career path and what my grandfathers and grandmothers wanted for me. And it was not the grand plan I had for myself. And this year, it was 1979, and I was 19. I'd always had big dreams and big plans, and now my future did not apparently look bright. So I challenged myself with what seemed like a grandiose goal to almost everybody. I wanted to become a multi-millionaire before I was 30. That would have been the time that, had I stayed in school, I would have been a doctor, completed my internship and residency. When I shared those goals with my family members, they politely smiled. I had picked the wrong time to become a real estate broker because in 1979, interest rates were over 20%. I was a persuasive person, so I could sell, but I could not get anybody qualified. So I went to work for my mother, one of the few people who would hire me, and I worked in her small appraisal business, and I learned real estate valuation. And at 23, I started my own appraisal business. After 2 failed efforts to get into development, I had a hit. I secured a deal to develop a 100,000 square foot office building in Washington, D.C. The year was 1986, and I was 26. On paper, I made over $3 million. Had I stayed in school, I would have been graduating from medical school a few months later. I had beaten my goal, beaten my target by 4 years. From there, I went on to build the Peebles Corporation and develop millions of square feet in Washington, D.C., Miami, New York, and other cities around the country. And the company currently has over $4 billion in its development pipeline. In 2004, Black Enterprise named my company Company of the Year, and Forbes magazine has listed me in its inaugural issue and several thereafter as one of the richest African Americans in the nation. I've been featured in many different publications and been on TV hundreds of times talking about real estate and politics, and I have achieved wealth that I never dreamed of. I've used my company to be a tool and a vehicle of transformation, and it all started because a 26-year-old mother read her closing statement and became a real estate broker. She was a realist. After that early success and achieving my first goal, I raised the bar on myself and I began expanding the company. In the fall of 1995, after a failed real estate deal in Washington, D.C., my wife and I took a well-deserved vacation to the new U.S. hotspot, South Beach. It was a life-changing vacation. So as part of a settlement agreement to end a 2-year tourism boycott of Miami led by African American leaders and organizations, the city of Miami Beach, along with Miami-Dade County, agreed to allocate $10 million of the $70 million they had previously committed to support the development of a convention hotel in South Beach, to support the development of a Black-owned hotel in South Beach. After an unsuccessful initial effort, the city issued a new request for proposals to develop a Royal Palm Hotel with majority Black ownership. So while on vacation, in my vacation apartment in Miami Beach for a post-Christmas holiday, I read the Miami Herald Sunday edition. It was New Year's Eve, 1995. I read an article that mentioned the upcoming RFP and that they were looking for an African American developer. So I thought to myself, how many of us are there? And I realized, okay, not many. And how many are reading the Miami Herald? And I was like praying, only one. Turned out there were a few more. I immediately called the broker who found us the apartment, and I had him get the RFP the day it was issued. I also had him show me the property next door to the Royal Palm, and I put that property under contract. and I put together a team of diverse partners and talented professionals. I wanted to do something transformational, especially given the backdrop of the political backdrop of the opportunity. And just to give you a sense, what the opportunity resulted from was Nelson Mandela, 4 months after being freed from prison in South Africa, scheduled a visit to the city of Miami. And Miami was going to roll out the red carpet for him as they would do a head of state, including a proclamation and the key to the city. He was doing a lot of interviews, and so Mandela thanked Fidel Castro for his support of his freedom. Well, that offended some people in Miami, and the city rescinded its offer. Black leaders said that wasn't acceptable, and if they didn't give Nelson Mandela the appropriate honor, they would lead a boycott. So the city did not relent. They did not give Mandela the honor that he deserved, and so the black community, led by local and national organizations such as the NAACP, the American Bar Association, the National Bar Association, started a tourism boycott that cost Miami-Dade and the region over $100 million. And as part of it, and what that shows, by the way, is that asking for something and relying on the good graces of people sometimes is not effective. And more often than not, it's not effective. But demanding fairness, equality, and respect can be transformational. So I wanted to do something transformational given that backdrop. So I assembled a team that was 100% African American owned. And that was a feat that was never accomplished. A 100% African American owned and developed hotel. So here we all were on paper and teamed together to bid for ownership. After a very hard-fought battle to win the RFP, on June 6th of 1996, our team was selected to build by the Miami Beach City Commission to build the first black-owned hotel in America. On May 16, 2002, the Royal Palm Hotel and Resort opened its doors. That was the first major hotel in the United States to be developed and owned 100% by African Americans, and it was a day of great pride for the city, the community, Black America, my family, and for me. To paraphrase the late Neil Armstrong, it was one small step for Miami, one giant leap for Black entrepreneurship. That was 17 years ago, and great progress has been made in America. Since then, 6 years ago, after the Royal Palm was opened, 40 blocks north on the very same road, I hosted then Senator Barack Obama at another barrier-breaking project of mine, the Bath Club. The Bath Club is a resort I developed on the Atlantic Ocean on the grounds of a once racially segregated private beach club. A few months after we hosted Senator Obama, he became America's first black president of the United States. At that time, at that moment, I was never more optimistic America was finally turning the page on racial disparity and ending the obstruction of black progress. Progress locked down from 246 years of slavery and 142 subsequent years of second-class citizenship. While slavery and legally imposed segregation was in our rear view, we continued the great struggle for economic equality. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once concluded, what does it profit a man to be able to eat at an integrated lunch counter if he doesn't have enough money to buy a hamburger? Therein lies the challenge we face in America today. African Americans claim only a fraction of the wealth of our white counterparts. In 2016, the median wealth of non-retired African Americans was was $13,460. That's less than 1/10 of the median wealth of $142,180 possessed by white Americans. This same year, black ownership fell to a then 50-year low of 42%, which is 59% lower than white ownership, which at the same time reached 72%. Fast forward 2 years, and it grew slightly to 44%, and white home ownership grew to 74%. That meant the disparity actually grew, and it continues to grow. The wealth disparity is a direct reflection of home ownership and business ownership disparities that currently exist. Without money, we cannot buy homes, and we cannot start businesses. America's #1 wealth generator is home ownership. With black-owned home ownership dramatically trailing our white counterparts, if things don't change, we will never, ever catch up. And we will never receive the promise of America's true promise of equality. In 1968, near the end of the Civil Rights Movement, the median African-American family income was 57% of our white counterparts. In 2016, the ratio was 56%. 50 years later, the disparity actually increased. Today, black-owned businesses represent approximately 2% of all U.S. businesses. So the pillar of America's capitalistic democracy is equality. Black Americans represent 13% of our nation's population. Therefore, if opportunity is really available on an equal basis, then the overall metrics should be reflective of the population demographics. What are the biggest obstacles we confront in pursuit of economic success? I was told a long time ago by a very wise person that in our capitalistic democracy, ownership is the essence of power. I believe that to be true. Therefore, if black business ownership is measured at less than 2%, which reflects just 15% of our population demographics, it serves to follow that we are essentially powerless when it comes to determining our future outcomes. However, America is a democracy, and our population, especially in major urban markets, is significant and often dominant. So working together, we have great power. With these statistical challenges, you may ask, is there any hope? How do we change this? Here's the answer. We exercise our political power to ensure we invest in more black-owned businesses. We need black-owned businesses to reflect the population percentage. It is black-owned businesses who most often provide jobs, careers, contracting opportunities to other African Americans. Black-owned businesses are more likely to invest in our communities. It is black real estate developers who will engage black real estate brokers to sell their condos, houses, and buildings. It is black developers who will build quality developments in our communities for our people. So what's the solution? What's the solution to significantly multiplying the number of black businesses and growing existing businesses? The answer is simple. Money. Think about it. Money is the fuel that powers the engines of business. And unfortunately, black businesses essentially have no access to investment capital to start or grow our businesses. Guidance Financial did a 2018 survey of 2,600 black business owners, and it showed that over 80% said their single biggest problem was access to capital. Recent studies have concluded that less than 2/10 of 1% of venture capital dollars go to businesses started by black women. Think about that, black women. 2/10 of 1% of venture capital money goes to supporting your ambitions, your dreams. Black entrepreneurs are forced to rely upon our own resources to build and grow our businesses. In fact, 70% of those surveyed used their own cash to start their companies, and 23% received investment from friends and family. In my industry, the commercial real estate business, there are only a handful of large-scale African-American developers nationally, and not many more small and mid-sized developers locally and regionally. Ironically, there are few educational or technical barriers to entry into commercial real estate development. So, educational barriers can't be the reason. Let me give you some perspective here, though. Two of the top New York City developers started out as a taxi cab driver and a wig salesman. The God building, the tallest residential building in New York City today, started in business selling wigs by mail in the living room of his small apartment. Think about that. 3 legendary Washington, D.C. developers who helped mentor me started their careers as a parking lot attendant, a busboy, and a janitor at the Mayflower Hotel. And 20 some odd years later, they bought the Mayflower Hotel. So real estate development is a low barrier to entry field. So why are there so few developers? Capital and access to it. Nothing gets built without capital, and the hardest money to raise is equity. On larger developments, the equity comes from private equity firms. Development is a leveraged business. It is rare for a developer of scale to fund more than 20% of the project's equity, and most often a developer contributes about 10% of the required equity. So think about that. For example, a $100 million building would be financed with 70% bank debt and $30 million of equity. The developer would likely contribute $3 million. So $3 million gets you ownership of a $100 million development project. And by the way, the development fee is going to be 4 to 5%, so that's going to be $4 to $5 million. So essentially, the developer gets paid to build a building. So the private equity firms that provide this capital, though, is generally money that comes from Wall Street firms. Here's a hidden secret, though. The money contributed by the Wall Street firms is not their money. No. It's generally the money from governmental, manufacturing, and service workers' retirement pension funds. Yes, it's the money of working men and women, and a large percentage of the pension contributors are black and brown people of color. Yet, less than 1/10 of 1% of all private equity money going into real estate goes into projects owned or developed by black Americans. This alarming statistic leads us to a key solution to closing the wealth gap and income disparities that African Americans confront. The solution is unlocking the money doors to deploy our own capital and our own people's pension money into some of our own businesses. Time has never been better. African American voters are a powerful voting bloc, and as I stated earlier, often a strong majority, who can often determine the outcome of elections. You watch and see. The Democratic nominee for President of the United States will only get there with significant support of African Americans. So we determine the outcome. We can shape elections, and we need more than somebody coming to us saying a few nice words. As you have heard and hear on the news, literally bombarded by it, the nation has recently been more focused on economic equality. Especially, it's been the year of the woman, or the last 2 years of the women following the Me Too movement, and I believe that the next decade, starting in 2020, will be the decade of women, and we need it to be the decade of black women. I'm going to say something that may not be politically correct, but black women have worked since they got here. They were kidnapped to get here. And they would wake up one morning and say, I want to go to work and I want equal pay. They were forced to work.
That's right.
They were forced to take care of their families and their children. They were forced to give free labor. So this country owes black women a tremendous debt. It's about time to start paying it. We have an ally in the United States Congress, the chairperson who oversees the financial services industry and who approves regulations and laws affecting them is a black woman, Maxine Waters. Congresswoman Waters has been a strong advocate for equal economic opportunity for black men and women. In fact, her first press release as chairperson of the House Financial Services Committee was to talk about knocking down these barriers to access to capital so that we can get a share of the money that is rightfully ours. So we must tell the politicians we want access to capital, and they must fight for it until they get it. If they don't, we need to elect other people who will fight and get it. We must exercise our political might and make consequences until we get treated fairly. We must all do our part for economic justice. We live in a democracy, so you have a part as well. Contact your state and city controllers and demand allocation of capital to black-owned businesses. Demand that they knock down this statistic with black women getting 0.1% of venture capital money. Demand that they direct our capital to be deployed to us and in our communities. Also, educate. We heard about education. We heard the treasurer talk about education. We need to educate our community of how this flow of capital takes place. We need to educate anyone who's receiving a pension or paying into a pension how their money is being spent. More often than not, their money is actually being used to gentrify their communities and price them out of it. So we need to educate them and wake them up. Imagine if they were aware of how their money was being spent, they would demand different results. So I'm doing my part. My company has a development project pipeline of over $4 billion in project costs. And we have committed to a goal of 35% of all of our contracts to go to black-owned businesses and women-owned businesses, and with a focus on black women-owned businesses. As a developer, I know firsthand the number one challenge and obstacle of growing our business is access to capital. And it continues to be access to capital as a challenge for even my business. Therefore, my company is in the process of raising a project equity fund to fund emerging developers, a fund whose sole purpose is to provide capital, hard-to-find equity to African American and women real estate developers and aspiring developers. I want to be crystal clear. This fund is not a philanthropic effort, but a great business model. The projects developed by minority and women-owned businesses in our major cities often produce much higher returns than the large-scale buildings being developed by these top-tier developers, because we work harder and we cannot afford to fail. We all know that for us, there is rarely a second chance. So we will prove that providing capital to a diverse group of entrepreneurs who reflect the diversity of our nation and our cities and our communities will result in superior returns. So it is up to us, it's up to all of us to close the economic divide. As Barack Obama said, change will not come if we wait for some other person, or if we wait for some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change we seek. It has been my honor to speak with you this afternoon.